boy, half god, all hero. You're listening to Ranking Rick Riordan, a podcast about Percy Jackson and the whole wide rest of the Riordanverse. I'm Dan.
I'm Olga.
And I'm Clara, and today we're catching up on the raddest Rick-related news.
This show is available on youtube.com/DoingOK and podcast services around the world. Let's get into it.
But first, Clara got married, everybody.
Yay.
Wow. It's an audio only thing, so you can't see the rings she's rocking.
She's now Mrs.
Cool.
Clara.
Yes.
That sounds like a daycare teacher.
Yeah, it really does. My name definitely doesn't really serve itself to first name only Mrs.
So we've been gone a long time. A lot's happened. And it was longer than we planned, some might notice.
Remember when it was supposed to be a summer break and now it's already been a holiday break?
Yeah,
It turns out planning a wedding is a lot.
Yeah, so between Clara's wedding, COVID for multiple of us, the holidays, all that stuff, January seemed like a good new beginning.
Mm-hmm.
New year, new us.
Yeah. But I am very excited to be back. We haven't done any content about anything in months. This is the longest I've gone without podcasting, like since 2010 or something crazy.
Oh my God.
That's hilarious. I was doing it before there were podcast services around the world.
It's true. No Spotify. So, a couple quick things. No video this episode as we're sort of easing back into things. Just wanted to simplify it. I do want to do video next time, but this is more of a laid back episode. It's not super scripted not that any of ours are scripted, but it's more just
Did you know, actually, they're all very scripted.
Use the word.
But yeah, it's more just like, let's catch up on, there's been a lot of updates in the Rick world. But I also want to talk about, this is chapter 2 of Ranking Rick Riordan, and what we've been talking about or thinking about, and I actually haven't talked to Clara about this, so I want Clara's opinion too.
Live.
So I'm thinking that we do 2 podcasts a month this year, and then we'll see what happens next year, just to make things a little simpler. And then I want to try to release them always on the 15th and the 30th, so you always know when it will be out. And it just gives us more time to edit each one, maybe more time to do a little bit more interesting stuff. And also, we don't have to maneuver schedules quite as often.
I think barring some of the months that we can foresee, like the planned extensive travel. But I think that because those big things are going to be planned ahead of time, we'd be able to make those announcements on the podcast that, like, we actually won't be recording for the month of a honeymoon.
I'm going to Wales, you guys. In spring.
When is Rick writing a book about whales?
Hey, Rick, if you write a book about whales, get in touch with my spouse, because I'm sure they have lots of ideas.
You might be thinking, well, February doesn't have a 30th. Well, we'll put it on the 28th. So
good catch.
I didn't even think of that.
I kept our list that we talked about last time of potential things for chapter 2. I'm going to run through it just real quick, and we can talk about if there's anything we want to add or change or whatever. So, Daughter of the Deep spoiler cast.
The long foretold.
My God.
The thing we've referenced, but not actually released.
The Mario cast.
Maybe that will go out during the honeymoon.
I'm looking at a Mario right now.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
Heroes of Olympus spin-off ideas. I actually started that 1 month ago. I'll get back to it. But obviously more Percy Jackson TV show stuff as it comes out, both news, and obviously we're going to cover the show as it happens. But I don't think that's going to be this year, unfortunately. Lightning Thief musical, Lightning Thief book re-review, which I think we should do like once we actually have a date for the show, because I want it to be like
that's cool.
to back. Magnus Chase casting video, picking Percy Jackson theme parks or video games. And then obviously Rick Riordan presents. So my thought process was...
I can't, sorry.
Yeah.
I can't believe you didn't read the title because it's my favorite. I think about it sometimes and giggle to myself at work on Zoom calls.
Oh, no.
I will read it. Ranking Rick Riordan presents Ranking Rick Riordan presents.
I just get such a kick out of it.
It's easy to keep us entertained anyway.
So a couple quick things about that. One is I do think what we would probably do for Rick Riordan Presents book is we would do on the 15th would be our spoiler-free review, and then the 30th would be like our spoiler-filled review. And maybe we'd just record it all at once.
Yeah, while it's fresh.
Yeah.
We'd also discussed, like, we're still toying around with the format of that and the whole, like, are we committing to reading, if there's a full series out or if it's still in progress? Like, would we be reading just the first one and talking about that?
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think we'll play that by ear. But
and I want to know you guys, your opinions as far as like, do you want to jump into a book? Do you want that to be like what we do in February, or do you want to do some of these other things that are more Riordanverse specific?
I miss books.
Yeah.
Not that I've been reading books, but I miss young adult books about mythology.
Yeah. So, all right.
I think I'm ready. Yeah, this has been a very long stretch where I have just been in like fanfic land and not reading anything that is published not for free. So
I believe
Clara,
I've been reading.
Sound like you've been through some stuff.
I'm currently reading a biography of an 11th century saint, which is really interesting, but I need to read other things.
As you can see, Clara and I are on two different sides of the intellectual spectrum.
But we both need Rick Riordan Presents.
And we meet in the middle with Rick.
So I believe we will start with Arusha because that is the first released. I'll double check that, but that's
the one
plan.
that I've been personally like pretty hyped for.
Yeah. So if you have ideas for episodes, let us know at Ranking Riordan on Twitter or email us at our podcast feedback at gmail.com. And you can also send us questions and stuff too. But let's get into first. We're talking about book news. So Percy Jackson and the Chalice of the Gods is coming in fall 2023. I wrote 2022 originally. That's how messed up time is. You want to read the blog little snippet?
Sure. So this is straight from Rick's blog. Everyone should also be checking that just because it's fun to read his writing.
He hasn't put anything out since mid-November, which is probably the longest he's gone in a long time.
Probably because they're deep in TV show stuff. And he's like, NDA.
I was going to say it's because we haven't been podcasting. So why produce content?
Wait until he hears that we're back in business. All right. The novel unfolds during Percy's senior year at Alternative High School in New York, after the action of the Heroes of Olympus, but before the trials of Apollo. This time around, Percy is not worried about saving the world. He has a much harder quest, getting into college. New Rome University requires recommendation letters from 3 gods, which means, yep, you guessed it, Percy has to run quests to get the letters. First quest, the cupbearer of the gods, Ganymede, is missing his chalice. Not only is this embarrassing, it's also a potential disaster, since any mortal who happens to drink from the cup will gain immortality. Percy, Annabeth, and Grover have to find the chalice and return it to Ganymede before anyone realizes he lost it.
All right, Clara, thoughts?
Excited. Very, very pumped for a return to this. I will miss Apollo. I already know. I'm looking at your quiver full of
Dan took up archery during never mind.
Sort of.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. I think this is a good time to set this book in. It's something that felt missing a little bit. And I just know every time we return to Percy, he's immediately I remember why he's so beloved.
Yeah. I'm going to try really hard not to be overly negative in this podcast because I have negative feelings about a few of these announcements. But I will say at the very bare minimum, I'm excited we're getting 2 Riordan books this year.
Yeah.
So like that's great, especially for the podcast. We're going to have new books to talk about, which is a new thing for us, right? We've never, I guess, Daughter of the Deep.
You don't know how we feel about that.
So that's really exciting. And it was a pretty shocking announcement that he was doing a Percy Jackson specific book. My more tepid feelings come from the fact that not a fan of, I mean, it's weird to call this a prequel, but it's like kind of a prequel.
It's filling space.
It's filling space. But that's what I'm worried about, is that it's going to just be filler. And especially when you read the description of what's happening, I'm worried that it's going to feel more like the short stories, maybe like a few of them bundled together, because the short stories are fine, but I'm worried it's going to be like, oh, we have to do this thing. Let's do some action, blah, blah. We did the thing. Now we're done. And like, I want there to be a character development. And
I don't think we have to worry about that, because this is, even though we got the snippets of Percy in Trials of Apollo, and we knew what he was like planning, and we know, we do know he gets into college. Like,
shocking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for him, it will be, because it's not a foregone conclusion. But like, the thing is that what I like about this, like, developmentally speaking, is that you can start with the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series when you're around Percy's age in there, like you're 10. And then you can read a bunch of them. But let's say you, like, the way some of us did, like, we paused around the time of high school of reading or whatever, and might pick up in college. Like, you have a touch point as a reader of those fears and anxieties of that older young adulthood. And putting it in the context of the character you already know and love, and feeling him grow. And it's more relatable that, like, as much as we love Trials of Apollo and Apollo's perspective, like, it's not really super relatable.
No,
it's I can feel for him and find things to relate to, but it's not the same thing. This is a new phase of coming of age. And it's going to be, in the context of the trio, the people, fun, silly adventures. But, like, Rick has also matured as a writer.
I'm so excited to see mature Rick. Not that he wasn't before.
He was so immature.
But, like, him, the way he writes now is not, it's just different. It's a new phase. And that, if anything, is like, while I'm excited, I'm cautiously optimistic about it, because he hasn't written a full Percy perspective since Trials of Apollo. Like, that's the thing where I'm like, the person who wrote Lightning Thief is not the person who
I guess it would be since the crossover. Well, he wrote Percy in Magnus Chase, but that wasn't first person. So I'd say the crossover with King Chronicles was probably the last time.
No, and I mean, the last time we got a full book with Percy was
Blood of Olympus.
No, it wouldn't, because that was only part.
Oh, you're saying a full book with him?
A full book of Percy.
That would be Last
would have been Last Olympian, right?
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Yeah. So assuming this is all a first-person Percy, which I don't know.
I mean, it might be Annabeth too. Like, that's the other thing. I'm also interested in Annabeth's perspective. Because for her, it's like, I'm a shoo-in, and what that means for her and their relation. Like, it's, I don't know. I'm fascinated. I just don't know. Looking back at this, I'll be like, this has a weird, like, dissonance of, I've read you writing Percy for so long, and this doesn't sound right. I'm getting ahead of myself.
I'm not worried about that at all. I think that's the thing that's going to be the most easy for him to slip into. I mean, like we even said when we were reading those crossover stories, it's
like the King Chronicles.
It was like, he's back, and then it feels exactly right.
I mean, no, but for the record, I know he knows how to write Percy. I mean to say that, like, the way he talks about themes and, like, seriously, it might, I think it'll just sound more grown up. And that's...
Well, so I think that, to me, my issue is an issue I have to get over, which is that I wish they would go more grown up. I would way rather if they announced, hey, there's a book taking place at New Rome post Trials of Apollo.
But maybe he's going to get there.
I have a feeling.
And then we can also get Apollo, like,
traumatized,
doing whatever he's doing.
I just have a feeling that one of the main reasons he's setting it here is high school is the farthest that he can really go, while it's still being a middle grade book. And I understand that the audience is majority middle grade, so it's my fault for wanting adult stuff in this kid's series. But
here's my other question about timing. So I'm trying to think back to Magnus Chase.
Yeah.
But would this timing work out so that if he continues the sort of Percy Annabeth plot for a little bit, that then they could get to that finally that crossover between Magnus Chase and Percy Jackson, where they're doing the thing that happened at the end of the Magnus Chase books?
I'm trying to remember.
Don't they end in their senior year, but before they go to college?
Well, isn't that where the spoiler happens? That like Annabeth is mourning someone?
Yeah. And it was at the end of the third book or the second book. Man, we're rusty.
Woof.
Yeah.
I need to re-listen to
cut all of this. It shows our inexperience.
Oh, no. Because they mention at the end of Trials of Apollo that the headless guy, or the guy with the head, and Chiron.
Bodiless.
Not Romulus.
No, bodiless.
Oh, bodiless.
Yeah.
Man,
like,
we
why
are
bringing up Romulus?
we
I'm
are
talking
rusty.
about Magnus Chase.
We are rusty. Okay. Head guy and Chiron and Bast were all having a meeting at the end of Trials of Apollo. So
Van? Is that his name?
Who?
This is making it worse.
No, it's Mimir. It's Mimir.
Old buddy, old pal.
I'm looking up what I thought.
I mean, I think we're going to have to just keep most of that in because
this is what happens when we have adult hobbies. We forget the ones that we actually...
Our first one back, guys. I apologize.
But you're right. I mean, that meeting was happening. So this will be before the potential of Magnus Chase crossover.
Yeah.
However, that is to say, again, I don't think Rick will ever fully be done with Percy.
Yeah.
So
I just don't think we're going to get a Percy-centric book where he's in college. Like, I can picture more things like Trials of Apollo where we check in on Percy and what he's doing, but I don't think we're going to get a Percy-centric college book.
Never say never, because I was not expecting this
That's
at
true.
the end of the day.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Ready to move on?
Yeah.
The Sun and the Star, a Nico D'Angelo adventure, is coming May 2nd, 2023.
So, from Rick's blog, as the son of Hades, Nico D'Angelo has been through so much, from the premature deaths of his mother and sister, to being outed against his will, to losing his friend Jason during the trials of Apollo. But there is a ray of sunshine in his life, literally. His boyfriend, Will Solace, the son of Apollo. Together, the two demigods can overcome any obstacle or foe. At least that's been the case so far, ... Now Nico is being plagued by a voice calling out to him from Tartarus, the lowest part of the underworld. He thinks he knows who it is, a reformed titan named Bob, whom Percy and Annabeth had to leave behind when they escaped Hades' realm. Nico's dreams and Rachel Dare's latest prophecy leave little doubt in Nico's mind that Bob is in some kind of trouble. Nico has to go on this quest, whether Mr. D and Chiron like it or not. And of course, Will insists on coming with. But can a being made of light survive in the darkest part of the world? And what does the prophecy mean that Nico will have to leave something of equal value behind? Nico will have to face demons both internal and external as his relationship with Will is tested to the core in this standalone adventure featuring two of the most popular characters in the Percy Jackson saga. I'm so excited. I know you guys might not, but I'm really excited.
Explain why. I mean, we know you love Nico.
I love Nico. I really, really want to see corrected/expanded this relationship that we saw in Trials of Apollo. Because I saw so many kernels that I really wish had been explored more. Like, these two are obviously really cute. And Rick clearly wants to have this be a good relationship, a happy, good thing for Nico. And I'm really excited to see him working with someone who I think will treat this gay relationship with the seriousness of exploring complexity as well. So not just saying and they lived happily ever after because I don't want to make a misstep, which I appreciate Rick for doing, especially after Nico's traumatic backstory, but
I also like that they straight up call out his forced outing, which I don't feel like, as far as I know, any of the books have acknowledged in the past.
Yeah.
And to clarify, the thing I think you're sort of touching on, Clara, is that this book is being co-written by Mark Oshiro.
Yeah. And honestly, that's the thing I'm the most excited about when it comes to this book, is just seeing what that delivers, that co-authorship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that I might be somewhere in between Clara and Dan.
Mm-hmm.
As
Literally.
is often that's
true. You can't see because it's an audio medium, but
I sit
Olga.
between them. Although it's also a triangle, so arguably, anyway, geometry aside, I am excited for the fact that we're getting a Nico and Will book.
Mm-hmm.
Where my hesitancy lies is the fact that it sounds like a Bob centric, that Bob is like the motivator. I hope that's a red herring, that it turns out not to be Bob,
or at least that it's more interesting than that.
Like that's
him.
just service level. And I'm a little again and we're going to Tartarus. And the thing is that I loved Percy and Annabeth's trip in Tartarus so much. It was so it hit me to my core, everything that happened, that I am kind of I don't want this to be the testing ground of a relationship every time, because I don't want it to be this is better. I just don't want to compare it to Percy and Annabeth. I don't want to be comparing Will and Nico to them as the two main big couples.
And the thing is, even, I mean, maybe it'll be better written, more interesting, but at the end of the day, I mean, I'll say what I was gonna say.
Okay.
We're not nearly as invested in Nico and Will as we were Percy and Annabeth, and obviously that mileage will vary on that. Some people are super invested, but I mean, as far as what the books have given us to literally invest in,
time-wise, pages.
We don't have the history, we don't have them getting together and what they've been through and all that stuff. So you're gonna have to do it while it's happened, So
yeah, I mean, part of that problem. I mean, Nico, I would say I'm more invested in Nico than I am in Will,
for sure.
So that what you just said is only kind of 50% true for me. Where I'm just but yes, that their relationship, I'm just I'm not sold on it. I like rooting for them as a couple.
Yeah.
It's just, Hidden Oracle was not our favorite book, and that was the introduction to them. And while that
technically not. They were at the end of
yeah.
I mean,
but they weren't together.
Yeah, they were dating, act formally, not just what is this?
Yeah.
But then that gets balanced by, I almost said Tower of Terror.
Nero.
Tower of Nero.
Which, if you think about it, was the Tower of Terror.
It was terrifying. So that gets better. Their relationship gets better, makes me more excited for this book based on where we leave them there. But yeah, for me, it's just we're going on a quest to Tartarus is the part where I'm if you insist, okay.
First of all, Tower of Nero, Tower of Terror is good for our Percy Jackson theme park ideas. But yeah, so here's my thing. Hearing there's going to be a Nico book is so exciting, right? Making it set in a place that we've already been, and that I would say that to me, the Tartarus journey is maybe the best quest in any of his writings, right? It's that chunk is my favorite thing that he's done, and so doing it again feels weird. Doing it on a quest for Bob when Percy's the one who left Bob behind also seems weird, especially when the whole point of that story was that Percy was realizing that he left wreckage behind him and he neglected Bob the first time.
And Nico had already been going and meeting with Bob.
I want to make it clear that, obviously Nico has a connection with Bob, and you could say, hey, it's things repeating itself that Nico's the one that's going. But it feels really weird. I honestly think I would be way more excited if Percy joined the two of them and it was about the dynamic of the three of them.
I have a question. Yeah. How great would it be if these two books were switched and the plot was Percy and Annabeth trying to figure out something with Bob, although I don't know whether that would be my favorite, but like it would maybe make more sense. And it was Nico and Will like applying to college and like figuring out what their futures were going to be.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And unlike Annabeth and Percy, are they like a forever couple?
Right. Yeah.
Like I think that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. I am reserving judgment on the Bob stuff. Like I am just putting that to the side because I don't know exactly what that'll be. Yeah. I will be frustrated if there were no consequences to that. Yeah. Like, because I agree, that's one of the most powerful pieces that he's written. And I will be sad if he undoes that especially to Olga's point, like in order to just make a comparison of like, in the same way Percy and Annabeth are a great couple, the more Nico and Will are like them, the better a couple they will be, which is like still a sort of like heterocentric, like I don't know, it's there's something uncomfortable. I don't think that's gonna happen. I really don't, and I don't know enough about this book to know whether the plot worries me yet. But I'm very glad that it is focused on Will and Nico. And I think what it's going to be is there's so much about all of these books that are about like young people's relationships. And I think this might be a much better version of the sort of like Calypso Leo thing. You think something's going to be perfect, and then there's a problem. But I think in this, it's going to be, and we're going to work through it, and that's going to make us stronger together. I think it's going to be more about their relationship and working through a problem and worrying about when your ideal thing doesn't live up to that and that sort of growing than it is like with Percy and Annabeth, which was so much more about and their like journey through Tartarus about themselves and the consequences of their actions and their personalities.
I just think the emphasis on Bob in this is I'm a little just like, I don't think you're actually you're telling us everything.
I mean, definitely not.
No, I mean,
I will say you actually made me think of, something I hadn't really thought of, which is another wrinkle of this is, on top of like, I think Percy should be the one to do this. It's also, I don't actually want more Bob. I actually think that the way Bob ended is a great ending. So like,
I'm really worried about what it does. Like if in 10 years we do another thing where we read through them all again, right? With the new books, this is a great idea. Then if we have this and it undoes that and it takes away the consequence and the weight of it, when we go and we read that again, it's not going to have the same impact.
Yeah, it's similar to imagine rereading all of Piper and Jason's stuff.
Imagine what it would be like, says Dan. Can you even imagine?
That's going to be weird as hell. Yeah. Rick is fascinated right now, I think, with returning to old territory because again, it's this like, depending on where you stop, you have a different version of the ending. And the fact is that now I feel like he's interested in not ending anything conclusively. So like you will always have this like cyclical nature of, but here's the thing, that is just part of like this mythology. It is cyclical because these myths, like again, you have the immortal deities. Like they're retold over and over and over again. They go to the same places. The same gods appear in different ways to different people. Like going back to Ganymede and back to Rick's level of like maturity. What more are we going to get about Ganymede and his relationship with Zeus and like how he became a god? Like that's been Ganymede has been in the background in a few like mentioned
taxi cab ad.
Yeah, like it's weird. I'm like, so are we going to get a more arguably revisionist to Rick's world of like how Ganymede is as a character, give him more agency, but he's still a frivolous guy who won't give Percy his letter until something happens. Like,
oh man, knowing what we know about how he handled Apollo and everything there, you raise a very interesting point about how much he's going to go into that myth of like this boy being abducted by Zeus, like definitely sexually assaulted and like kind of enslaved. And I would never have thought, I mean, yeah, that's like, it depends on how you're reading things, but
it'll still be, again, it's still a like teen.
I think
like Trials of a Puppet Apollo.
No, I know.
I think
I'm not
he'll find a middle.
Heavy.
He'll find a middle ground.
But that's my point. Like there will be a middle point, and then again connecting it back to like Nico and Will of like, all right, yes, that's because historically myths have only like taken place in so many places, like the Greek and Roman, like deity myths. Like it was in their sphere of influence, and Tartarus was a place that like loomed ever present.
Well, I'm also interested to see. I don't think we're gonna go and be like, now it's their version of seeing the Uri, and now it's their version.
Right.
Like, I think there are going to be new things that they encounter, and that there's enough things in Tartarus that they didn't really touch on everything. And even like Nyx was like a joke, and I feel like you could do more with that. So I am interested in that. I will say, I think I would be a lot more pumped for this book if it was like book 3 of a Nico pentology, because
wouldn't we all?
As opposed to a standalone. First of all, that's where I really take issue. Standalone Rick and Mark,
But if you asked me when I was reading like the original Percy Jackson or Heroes of Olympus or whatever, and you said you want a Nico book, what I'm excited about for that is like the dark, badass loner doing some cool dark thing. And that's what I want, and is not what we're going to really get.
But hear me out. Hear me out, because I think this puts Nico in a position where he's going to sort of, I don't want to say like revert, because I don't necessarily mean backwards in a bad way.
Yeah.
But he's in a situation where it like makes sense for him to be that person. And how does that work with Will?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's so much about what that later adolescence is not just, this is me and the world revolves around me and I am me and here's my identity. It's what happens when you bring that identity in with other people, and how do you negotiate that? And how can you, in a relationship, be your authentic self and be with another person?
Yeah.
I think there are really interesting questions there. And I think that we will see Nico being a badass, but I think that it won't, in the same way that like Percy being a great hero and killing all these monsters is called into question.
Yeah.
In the same way, I mean, Nico's been called into question.
Yeah.
But I also just, I want to say about like returning to Tartarus, it feels sort of like, I mean, it's a metaphor like everything, but it's a like going to hell and back, literally. And so in the same way that like Percy and Annabeth will go to hell and back, now we're seeing what happens when Nico and Will go to hell and back. And it could be sort of like, if we just think of it as a trope and less of a set piece.
Yeah. That's fair. I think, you have to think about it on a like a personal character level more, because if you told me, hey, we're going to do a new book and they're going to the Sea of Monsters again, I would not be happy about
of all the places. If you told me we were going to the Tower of Nero again,
that's fair.
Maybe.
I'm just so excited for Will.
Yeah, that's true. A couple of things. So I wanted to just finish what I was saying about the pentology idea. Just because I would just love a first book that was really about just solidifying this is who Nico is in general. Because, we have that, but we never really had it from like, I guess we had it a little bit in Blood of Olympus from his perspective, but I want like a book from his perspective about him. Then I want a second book where he meets Will and they get together. And then the third book where they have to reckon with getting older and the clashing identities and all that stuff you were talking about.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And you mentioned the excited to learn more about Will. Definitely excited for that. I am interested in the fact it's called a Nico D'Angelo adventure. At this point, I think it's going to be Nico only perspective.
I hope so. I agree with you on that level. Like, I am much less interested in getting two sides of like whatever. And so we can see both of their thoughts and we know that it's going to be okay. I'm much more interested in the stakes that are raised when you only have one person's internal dialogue.
Yeah. am excited for Will to get fleshed out more, and whether he's a POV character or not, that will happen.
It will.
Yeah, I was waiting for you guys to.
Glad we both did. We lived up to your expectations.
Yes, you did.
My last question about this book: the sun and the star. Obviously, the sun, at least on a basic level, applies to Apollo and Will. Does the star have anything to do with Hades, or is that Iapetus? Because I believe Iapetus/Bob is like a star guy, or am I making that up?
I'm Googling.
I'm trying to remember.
A lot of things in the sky are named after Titans, for sure.
Or I might be confusing him with the one that there actually is, like the one that's the opposite of the sun one. Hyperion.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. There was like the opposite of Hyperion that Jason fought in California.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he was the starry guy. I can't remember he's like the god of the West or something. I forget.
Yeah, I'm not seeing too much. At least the Wikipedia doesn't seem to indicate. He's just.
Well, there was also the whole thing about like say hello to the stars for me.
Oh.
Was like closely associated.
Well, I thought that was also just like. I mean, you bring a good point. That's like he's staying in He's he's been in Hades. He's sacrificing Tartarus. Yeah, I am fascinated.
There's also something I hope happens that I saw. I remember we talked to somebody, maybe emailed it or something. Is that Zoe Nightshade is his granddaughter, and there's the whole thing about say hello to the stars for me, and she's a constellation.
Yeah, that's
good. If they actually like hit on that in the book, it would be pretty cool.
That would be. All right. The point is our expectations are very high for this. So.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be too negative. I really want to be wrong about both of these books. And so I'm trying to go in with an open mind.
Obviously, we're not rooting for this to not please us.
It will. It's going to be fan service enough, I think, too, that
The problem is that every fan has a different service that they want the book to fulfill.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And us as people not in their teens or early 20s are going to be asking something pretty different of this. Are any of us going to be in our 20s actually by the time these books come out?
Probably.
I mean, Dan and I are already a lost cause.
No, you still will be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. May 2nd, 2023. Yeah. Not going to fully dox myself with my birthday, but
the last book thing I wanted to mention real quick is that the Mark of Athena graphic novel is going on sale September 26, 2023. I thought this might never come out because the last one, the Son of Neptune one, came out in 2017. So if anybody knows the story behind this, I am interested.
I'm assuming sales have skyrocketed thanks to the show.
Oh. Because I assumed it wasn't going forward because the first two didn't sell well enough. But maybe.
Right. That's why I'm saying, probably he might have. I wouldn't be surprised if Rick would always want to finish them. He is a completionist, even though I think these stories will never be done.
Over-completionist.
So in that sense, I'm really glad to see that they're moving forward. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if this was a test case that if they're like, this sustains the sales we want, that then it might hopefully complete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That being said, I'd really like some Magnus Chase graphic novels, please.
Yes.
I think that would be really cool.
That would be awesome.
That would be so good. They're perfect for that.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to reread those visually again. Did they ever finish the Kane Chronicles ones?
Kane Chronicles been done for a while, yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was just the first one.
No, all three of them are out. Yeah. Editor Dan here. While I was editing this episode, a pretty cool thing happened, and that was the casting of Zeus and Poseidon. The second half of the podcast you were listening to was about casting news and stuff like that for the TV show, but we recorded it before this news came out. So I'm going to split this in two, and we're going to talk about the Zeus and Poseidon stuff, and I'll add that to what we already recorded, and that should hopefully come out next week. And then on February 15th, we will have the Aru Shah and the End of Time podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, and may the gods be ever in your favor.